Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, to the WeAreChange news show, where I strive to be what the news actually should be, focusing on information that actually affects us and bring awareness to the issues that actually matter to our lives and to the lives of other people on this planet, trying to make you think about issues outside of the box and not along political lines, since most news out there right now is being used to divide and conquer society, while at the same time making an appeal to authority, while disregarding the truth. And screw those people. So that's why in this video we're going to talk about the old concept known as freedom, which is being eviscerated and wiped off from human society, social media companies now becoming the thought police, an update on the horrible sexual abusers and pedophiles in the upper echelons of our society, and of course the latest on war and all the human suffering happening on this planet right now. So yeah. Okay, let's just do this. And I think one of the most puzzling stories that came out this week is Twitter announcing that they will now judge verified users' offline behavior in order to judge if prominent people on their social media platform are able to be verified or even use Twitter. And this is right after Twitter just de-verified and even banned people who are considered either on the right or far right. And now they announced that they are going to go and review all verified accounts, over 250,000 of them, not explaining what a review would actually mean and what it even considers offline behavior. So pretty much Twitter will now spy on you on and off of its website to make sure that you're complying with their very vague terms and services, or really just the bigger political agenda that they have, before they decide to censor you or de-verify you off their platform. And what Twitter is really doing here is really insane. Because of the popularity of this social media platform, many people see it as a public utility, especially for breaking news and world events. And some of the people that they either censored or de-verified, I even completely disagree with, and I find completely repugnant. But to progress society forward, we can't just censor the voices we don't like, especially on a public platform, for Twitter's hypocritical political agenda, because if it begins here, any idea that challenges the status quo will be next. And now in other news of big companies just doing what the hell they want, the US Senate just voted and approved a law that makes sure you can't sue your bank or credit card company anymore. Now, of course, US Vice President Mike Pence broke the tie and approved this resolution when the vote came down to a 50-50 outcome in the Senate, and is now being expected to be signed by US President Donald Trump, repealing consumer protection laws, ensuring that consumers can no longer bring class action lawsuits, of course, against the very ethical, honest, and upright credit card companies and big banks. While at the same time, the Senate just passed a law called, very ironically, the USA Liberty Act, which actually destroys personal liberty and allows the government to now warrantlessly spy on you. And of course, search your private data without a warrant. And with the government virtually knowing everything about you and your online activity, why not just give them your DNA? Oh wait, that's actually happening right now, as the police could now request and get your DNA without your knowledge or consent via websites like Ancestry and 23andMe. So in this next part, I'm going to try to cover more articles in a quicker way, so make sure you pay attention to the screen. But ultimately, we live in a country where in the name of liberty, the government wants to know everything you're doing, have your DNA on hand, as police officers break down your door and raid your house for hibiscus plants to fight a failing war on drugs, where the mainstream media lies to you about these drugs in favor of the pharmaceutical industrial complex that keeps them running. A place where professors who are teaching a critical thinking course get in trouble and are censored by higher learning institutions, universities, for making their students critically think too much, where major financial institutions like JP Morgan and Chase tell you that decentralized online cryptocurrencies are money laundering while they break the law and commit money laundering themselves. All the while, the government gives them a slap on the wrist, takes our money, and even puts us in more debt so we could blow up more ish around the world and then rebuild it, all in the name of a failing war on terror that is creating more terrorism. So yeah, that's happening. And in more failed war on terror news, we of course got the news many Pentagon officials recently declared that ISIS has been defeated inside of Syria, but yet for some reason the United States is still saying that they intend to remain in that country, where initially the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel supported the rebel groups which have turned out to be radical Islamic terrorists, armed them, financed them, and allowed them to prosper in that region in their greater geopolitical goal of getting rid of Bashar al-Assad, which they have failed to do so. I digress, but this next story is becoming more and more difficult to cover with just how horrible it is, because it is mainly the relationship that the United States has with Saudi Arabia and them working together in a coalition which is fueling war crimes that are happening right now in Yemen. Something that even the U.S. House of Representatives, our Congress, voted and passed a resolution saying that the U.S. military assistance to Saudi Arabia in its war in Yemen is not authorized under legislation passed by Congress to fight terrorism or invade Iraq. And it's not, but this is the justification that Obama and now Donald Trump are using in order to help Saudi Arabia commit horrible, massive, just utterly inhumane acts inside of Yemen right now, where officially the United States is aligned with the side that is linked to Sunni Wahhabists and Al-Qaeda, going against the Iranian-linked Houthi rebels in that country, ultimately a proxy war that is causing mass human suffering. War crimes are being committed, barrel bombs are being dropped on schools and hospitals and on other civilian infrastructure, causing around 20 million people in Yemen to need humanitarian assistance to just their basic needs. And a lot of people in the supposed alternative media won't tell you this, but this is all being done with the approval and signing off of Donald Trump. Now, the House resolution that was passed is non-binding, which means it doesn't do jack. Just like the United Nations, where 3 agencies are now urging the Saudi-led coalition, which is the United States and the United Kingdom, to lift the current blockade they have in that country, not allowing humanitarian aid to be received, where already 7 million people are facing famine and a cholera epidemic that could wipe out close to 1 million people. The situation is so bad right now that on average 130 kids die every single day in Yemen. Innocent children who aren't guilty of anything except for being born in the wrong place in this world. And it's staggering while all of this is happening. This suffering is continuing and expanding while the US mainstream media doesn't even tell you that the United States is directly involved in this. And so aren't a lot of alternative media figures, because they don't want to criticize Donald Trump. And I'm sorry, on this issue, he is completely and utterly wrong. Not just that it's completely immoral and wrong, but the fact that he's aligning himself with Al-Qaeda on this and Sunni Wahhabism, which directly contradicts everything that he says he is doing. Seeing some of the images that are coming out of Yemen right now are definitely not for the faint of heart, and seeing this being done by our president with our taxes is just utterly infuriating, especially with the mainstream media making sure you never hear about that fact. The left totally ignores it because of microaggressions, while people on the right just bury their heads in sand, forget about all the promises that Trump was making when he was campaigning, and totally decide to ignore this issue and not hold Donald Trump accountable because they're worried that they're going to lose some fans in the process. Maybe I'm being too emotional, but this has really struck a nerve with me. Am I being too hyperbolic? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm looking forward to your feedback. But continuing on, the United States and the Trump administration still are seeking to bolster Saudi Arabia in their greater push for war with Iran and Hezbollah, where many experts are seeing Saudi Arabia as the aggressor that Hezbollah is mainly located in. Israel said, screw it, we're just going to start firing tank rounds on the Syrian government, which of course violated the 1974 ceasefire. Not the first time, by the way. This time in another clear move trying to escalate the situation. And since you know ISIS is mainly defeated because of Hezbollah, Iran, Russia, Syria, and all these other countries that you don't know about inside of Syria, well, Trump still has to keep the bombs dropping, so we're bombing Somalia now, as President Trump accelerates drone strikes inside of Somalia and more airstrikes inside of Iraq, which the US mainstream media, in this instance, 31 more times more civilians were killed than what was originally reported. And I don't know about you, but I don't like innocent civilians being murdered by robotic death flying machines. But that's just me. And while all this illegal activity happens, there's no one court-martialed, there's no one held accountable for their illegal actions, there's no justice. But when a US Navy official decides to draw a penis in the sky, yeah, he's gonna be held accountable. He's gonna get in trouble. Drawing a penis in the sky, killing innocent civilians. It just seems like the scales of justice are just a little bit off. And while all of this happens, why not just give a $53 billion deal in Pentagon supplies and enrich one of the largest corporations out there, Amazon? And in correlation with other very strange purchases made by the US military, we of course have yet another update on the pedophiles and sexual predators in the upper echelons of our society, to which now total to 86 people so far who have been accused of harassment, molestation, rape, and pedophilia. Yeah, that's a lot of people. And while all of this happens, cultural influencers like Leah Dunham, who previously tweeted that women don't lie about rape, just started defending her friend that has been accused of rape. By the way, this is the same Leah Dunham that many people forget in her own book admitted to inappropriately fondling her younger sister, bribed her with candy, and exploited her for her own supposed, quote, sexual exploration. Just a little bit of information you should know on top of this story. And with all these scandals happening, we're seeing more people just totally break their moral compass and just decide to play political hot potato with all these latest allegations that are coming out. Like the Huffington Post that just deleted an article claiming that U.S. Senator Al Franken's accuser was framing him. An article, of course, that he promptly deleted because, yet again, it shows people's double standards, completely destroying their morals and civility in order to push a political power play. And as I've been saying before, this shouldn't be a left and right issue, just the wrong and right one, especially after people are able to fact check and make sure people aren't falsely accusing each other. And it's not just the Democrats that are in hot water. We also have just now a former Oklahoma state senator that has agreed to plead guilty to child sex trafficking offenses. Another just awful, disgusting story of horrible people being in government, abusing their power, and just being horrible individuals. What a surprise. And now an 8th woman came out against former President George H.W. Bush, the former criminal CIA director, and has yet accused him of groping her like he did all the other 7 women that accused him of the same thing. And I think after the 8th accuser comes out, I think there's a very solid case here. But don't listen to me, I'm the crazy conspiracy theorist. And these stories just go on and on, showing you how powerful people and institutions are able to get away with horrible, evil, demonic, criminal behavior only because of their power and influence, but now because of the internet, as it's slowly being wiped clean and soft censored, we still, and I believe this deep down, have the opportunity to combat all of that money and power with simple truth and sharing honest information that resonates with you the most. And it's a huge uphill battle, but we've seen things done on the internet that previously before would never be humanly possible, with being able to share information in the moment as it happens and then completely change the world because of that information. And that's why it's very important for that information to be free, uncensored, unfiltered, and be decided on by the people and not the kakistocracy. If you agree, share this message with people who you think should hear it. Understand that your actions have power, and if it wasn't for you watching, listening, subscribing, donating, I totally wouldn't be here, and I only am because of you. And that's why I always end my broadcast by saying, I love you. Thank you again so much for watching.